So we're going to take a look at 4.5 homework just to practice a couple extra examples for our test tomorrow. So we're going to do a graphing one. So let's take a look at 17. So first thing we want to do before we graph it is we need to solve. And to solve, we have to factor. So what should I do first? GCF. What's my GCF? Negative 4x squared. Why would it be better to take out a negative 4? That way our leading term is positive. So we want to take out a negative 4x squared. I'd be left with x squared minus 2x minus 15. Now do I have two factors of 15 that add to negative 2? Negative 5 and 3, perfect. So this would factor into negative 4x squared, x minus 5, and x plus 3. Now what would I need to do to solve? Set them equal to 0. So negative 4x squared is equal to 0. X minus 5 is equal to 0. And x plus 3 is equal to 0. So what does x equal? 0. What? 5 and negative 3. Perfect. So I can put those points on my graph. I'm going to have a point at negative 3, positive 5, and 0. Now I need to talk about my multiplicity. I need to know what I'm doing at each one of these points. So looking at 0, what's my multiplicity here? Are you sure? Why is it 2? Because it's x squared. So I technically have two x's that are 0. So my multiplicity is 2. Is 2 even or odd? Even. And if I have even multiplicity, I touch and turn. Awesome. How many x's equal to 5s do I have? Just 1. So my multiplicity is 1. 1 is odd. And if I have odd multiplicity, we go through. And then what about x is equal to negative 3? Just 1. So my multiplicity is 1. Is it even or odd? Odd. Do I touch and turn or go through? Go through. All right, we also need to know our end behavior. How is our graph going to start and end? So we got to look at our leading term here. Is it positive or negative? Negative. So what does that tell us about the right arrow? Right arrow goes down. And is it even or odd? The degree is even. So what does that mean? The other arrow goes down. They go in the same direction. If it's even, they go in the same direction. So out of my point farthest to the left, I have an arrow that goes down. And out of my point farthest to the right, I have an arrow that goes down. I just copy these two arrows. Now we need to connect the dots. So we need to see, what am I doing at each point? Well, we already said that here with our multiplicity. But more specifically, at negative 3, what did I say that I do? I go through. So I'm going to go through the x-axis at this point. Go through the x-axis. We cross the x-axis. At 0, what do we do? Touch and turn. So I'm going to make my way over to 0, and I just touch and turn. We don't go through the x-axis, just touch and turn. We bounce off of it. And then at 5, what do we do? Go through. So go through the x-axis there. So this would be our graph. So let's look at 25. Here it says find all the real solutions of the equation. So if it says find all the real solutions or it says find all the real zeros, it's asking for us to solve. Anytime it has an equal sign, it wants us to solve. If I have 4 terms, how could I solve? By grouping, but can I group here? No. So if we can't group, how else would we solve? Last over first. So my last term is 15. What are factors of my last term? 1, 15, 3, and 5. Perfect. And those are all plus or minus. Could be the positives or the negatives of those. What's factors of my first term? 1. Your first term will always be 1. It'll just make these the whole numbers. So I have to do synthetic division to test and see which one works. So these are my possible solutions. But I need to see which ones are my actual solutions. How many answers am I going to have here? 3, because my highest degree is 3. So I have x is equal to, and I need 3 numbers there. What's going to go inside the box? 1, 1, negative 17, and 15. What do we want to try first? Let's try 3. Drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. Does 3 work? Yes. If you get 0 as your remainder, 3 works. So I'm going to add that to my list of solutions. 3. So now I need 2 more solutions. How could I find another solution? I could do the last over first again, or I could see if this factors. If I start with x to the 3rd power, this is going to start with x to the 2nd power, plus 4x minus 5. So what are 2 factors of negative 5 that add to 4? 5 and negative 1. So this would factor into x plus 5 and x minus 1. So what would x equal? Negative 5 and positive 1, because we just set both of these equal to 0. So negative 5 and positive 1. So these would be our 3 solutions. So let's take a look at number 5. So it says to solve, so we need x is equal to. So for number 5, what would I do first to solve? Before I take out the GCF, I want to move 2x to the other side. So before I factor, I want to get it to be equal to 0 first. So this is 2x to the 4th power minus 4x cubed plus 2x squared is equal to 0. Now I can take out the GCF. What's my GCF? 2x squared. So when I take out 2x squared, I'm left with x squared minus 2x. What would come next?
1.
Plus 1, perfect. Because 2x squared divided by 2x squared would be 1. We need that 1 there. Now let's see, do I have 2 factors of 1 that add to negative 2? Negative 1 and negative 1. So this would break down into x minus 1 and x minus 1. And don't forget about the GCF, because we need that in our answer too. What should I do next? Set each piece equal to 0. So 2x squared is equal to 0. X minus 1 is equal to 0. And x minus 1 is equal to 0. So when we solve, we get x is equal to 0. And what else? X equals 1 and x equals 1. Perfect. So these would be our answers. You don't have to list it twice if it repeats, but it's fine if you do. Any questions here? All right, let's take a look at number 7. So I have 5w cubed is equal to 50w. This is the 4.5 homework. We're just going to practice some examples. What should I do first to solve? Make it equal to 0. So I have to move that 50w to the other side. So 5w cubed minus 50w is equal to 0. Now what can I do? I can take out a 5w. I'm going to take out my GCF. So I'd be left with w squared minus 10. What should I do next? Set each piece equal to 0. So 5w is equal to 0. And w squared minus 10 is equal to 0. So in the first one, what would w equal? 0. And then how would I solve for w in the second one? Add 10. So w squared is equal to 10. What should I do next? Square root both sides. So what would w equal? Plus or minus square root 10. Perfect. So these would be our answers. So let's take a look at 13. So when we're graphing, we just need to solve it just like we did in the ones before. But then we just have to figure out what we're doing at each point. So what would I do first to solve? Take out the GCF. What's the GCF? X squared. So I take out x squared, and I'm left with x squared plus x minus 6. Now, do I have two factors of -6 that add to 1? -2 and 3. Perfect. So this would break apart into x plus 3 and x minus 2. Now to solve, what would I do? Set them all equal to 0. So x squared is equal to 0, x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x minus 2 is equal to 0. So what does x equal? 0, -3, and +2. Perfect. Now we also need to talk about our multiplicity for each one of these points. We need to see what we're doing at each number. So for x is equal to 0, what would my multiplicity be there? 2. Awesome, because it's x squared. I have 2 zeros there. So my multiplicity is 2. Is 2 an even or odd number? Even. And if it's even multiplicity, what do I do? Touch and turn. How many x's equal to -3's do I have? 1. So my multiplicity is 1. Is 1 even or odd? Odd. So what do? Go through. How many x's equal to 2's do I have? 1. Is it even or odd? Odd, because we're talking about the 1. So we're talking about multiplicity. Multiplicity is odd. Do we touch and turn or go through? Go through when it's odd multiplicity. So we also need to know what our end behavior is going to do. How is our graph going to start and how is it going to end? So we look at our leading term here. Is it positive or negative? Positive. So what does that tell us? Right arrow goes up. Positive or negative tells us what the right arrow does. Is it even or odd? It's even, so it goes in the same direction. So the left one's going to go up too. So I'm going to draw my graph here. I'll give you guys a graph for the graphing one on the test, but we have to draw it here. So I have -3, 2, and 0. Now my end behavior, my arrows up and up, are going to go out of the point farthest to the left and farthest to the right. And we're going to start connecting our dots, just going from left to right. So what's my graph going to do at -3? Go through. We said it goes through -3. So I go through the x-axis. I cross the x-axis. Next, we're going to make our way over to 0. It's our next point. Do I touch and turn or go through at 0? Touch and turn. So we touch 0 and turn the other way. And what do we do at +2? Go through. So we go through +2. So your graph should look like this. Next, let's take a look at 26. So 26, it says find all the real solutions of the equation. So I could say real solutions or real zeros. These mean the same thing. If it says find all the real zeros, you're still solving. You just got to find what x is equal to. If I can't factor, what would I do to solve? Last over first. So I would do last over first. What are factors of my last? 1 and 6. 2 and 3, and it would be the positive or negatives of all of these. What are factors of my first? 1. So it's just all over 1. You'll always have 1 as your first term, so it just makes them all whole numbers. So I'm going to do synthetic division. I need my remainder to be 0 in order for this to work. What's going to go inside the box? 1, -2, -5, and 6 are coefficients here. So 1, -2, -5, and 6. What do you want to try first? -2. So drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. Does it work? Yes. So one of my answers is going to be -2. How many more answers am I going to have? How many more? 2 more, because I'm going to have 3 total. What your highest degree is, that's how many zeros that you'll have. So I have 2 more. So if my question here starts with x to the 3rd power, my answer is going to start with x squared minus 4x plus 3. Now we have a couple different options here. We can either do last over first again, or we can see if this factors. Let's check and see if it factors. Do I have 2 factors of 3 that add to -4? -3 and -1, perfect. So this factors into x minus 3 and x minus 1. And we're not just trying to factor, we're trying to solve. We need to find what x is equal to. So what would I have to do next? Set them equal to 0. So x minus 3 is equal to 0, and x minus 1 is equal to 0. So what does x equal? And 1. Perfect. 3 and 1. So if we would have tried 1 from the start here, that would have worked. You would have just gotten a different answer, but it would have factored into the other 2 answers. So any one of these 3 to start would have worked. You'll find the other 2 answers once you factor it. But these are 3 solutions. So 4.6 homework, we have these questions that say identify the number of solutions. If it says the number of solutions, you're just telling me how many solutions you have. You don't have to actually name the solution. So what would we look at to find the number of solutions? The highest degree. So what's our highest degree for 8? 12. Be careful there because it's not the first one. It's actually the last. So just look at your highest degree to determine the number of solutions. All right, let's go to the right side of the page. Let's look at 25. All right, 25 we need to figure out first. Are we missing any of the zeros here? What are we missing? Positive square root 5. Because anytime we have a square root or an I, we need its partner. So when I write this out in factored form, I would have x minus 4. What would come next? We could say, well, next we would have minus negative square root 5, so it would turn into plus square root 5, and x minus square root 5. Just as long as we have one of each. Because remember, it's always x minus the number. Now I need to multiply this out. So which 2 would I multiply out first? The ones with the square roots. We multiply our conjugates here. You could FOIL this, or you could do the shortcut. The shortcut is the first term squared minus the second term squared. Always minus. So x squared minus square root 5 squared.
So let's say it was negative square root 5 is the first one, but it's still negative.
Yeah, it's always minus in the middle. It doesn't matter the order of these 2, because you're going to have like 1 plus and 1 minus. So technically here, like when we FOIL this out, we multiply the first ones, so we get x squared. The outer and the inner are going to cancel out because they're conjugates. Yeah. So then the last ones would always be negative. So what is the square root of 5 squared? 5. It cancels out, so it's just 5. So I have x squared minus 5. What would I have to do next? Got to multiply the x minus 4 to it. Because we're multiplying these all out. We're not factoring here. We're just multiplying everything together. So here we're going to FOIL. So we get x cubed minus 5x minus 4x squared plus 20. Could I leave my answer like this? No. Got to put it in standard form. So x cubed minus 4x squared minus 5x plus 20. That would be our answer. All right, good with this one? All right, let's take a look at 27. So 27. For 27, the directions will say, leave in factored form. So we don't have to multiply it out. We just need to find what's missing and write it together. So what zeros am I missing here? 1 minus I. Anything else? 2 plus square root 3. So how many zeros do I have total here? 5. So each one of these needs to be an x minus the number. So x minus 2. Then perfect. So x minus 2 minus square root 3 and x minus 2 plus square root 3. So it's always x minus whatever your 0 is. This is our answer. You don't have to multiply this out. Just leave it in factored form. So again, on your test tomorrow, just make sure you read the directions. One of them will say leave in factored form, so you don't multiply it out. The other one of these will be just like the directions here. We'll say find the polynomial. So you would actually have to multiply it out. You will have one of each, so just make sure you read the directions. One of them you don't have to multiply out. Don't waste your time multiplying all of this out. So I did 25 and 27 with the other class. I'm going to do one similar to those just so we have some extra practice. So I'm just going to call it, I don't know, 25B. So this is 4.6 homework. But I'm just going to make up different numbers here, but it'll be similar to 25. So here's when it gives us the zeros, and we have to figure out if we're missing any and write the polynomial. So let's say we were given -2 square root 7, and that's it, just these two. First thing we want to know, are we missing any zeros here? What are we missing? Negative square root 7. Perfect, because if we have a positive square root, or if we have a square root, we need its partner, it needs its pair. So if I had negative square root 7, I would know that positive square root 7 is also a 0. So when I put these into factored form, it's always x minus the number. So what would go first?
X plus 2.
Awesome. X minus -2 would turn into x plus 2. Then we'd have x minus square root 7 and x plus square root 7. Now, which two would I have to multiply out first? Second two. So you want to multiply these two out because they're conjugate, so we could FOIL or we could do the shortcut. So the shortcut is our first term squared minus the second term squared. It's always, always, always minus in the middle. So it'd be x squared minus square root 7 squared. Now what is square root 7 squared? Just 7. The square root and the squared cancel. So this is x squared minus 7. If you were to FOIL these two out, you'll get the same thing because you're multiplying the first, the outers and the inners end up canceling, and then it's the last multiplied together. So you'd get the same thing if you FOILed this out. What would I have to do next? We got to multiply it by x plus 2. We got to multiply all three together, so we can't forget about that one. So now when we multiply these, we're just FOILing. Let's multiply the first. We got x cubed. The outers would be negative 7x. The inners would be plus 2x squared. And then the last would be negative 14. Could I leave my answer like this? No, why not? It's It's not in standard form, so I got to put it in standard form. Start with x cubed plus 2x squared minus 7x minus 14. So this would be our answer. All right, I want to do one more that's kind of like 27. So I'm just going to make up numbers that are similar to 27. So I'll call it 27b. So let's say I was given the zeros as 1, -2 plus I, and 4 minus square root 2. Am I missing any zeros here? What?
2 minus.
Awesome. The real part stays the same, so it should be -2 minus I, and what else? 4 plus square root 2. Perfect. So we have 5 zeros here. If you have a question like this, the directions will probably say, leave in factored form. So we're just going to have to write out our x minus all of our zeros, but we don't have to multiply it all together. All right, so we start with x minus 1. What would come next? We can just say x minus and then -2 plus I. That way we don't have to worry about distributing the negative to both things. Then we can say x minus -2 minus I. What would come next? X minus 4 minus square root 2 and x minus 4 plus square root 2. So it's just always x minus. Even if it's 2 terms, just x minus whatever your terms are. So this would be our answer.